Today on Locked On Canadiens, we talk about the Canadiens prospect pool and an article that gives us lots of hope and also kind of an instruction manual for the Habs going forward.
You are Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi there, everyone, and welcome to episode 897. We thank you for making us your first listen of the day every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. My name is Laura Sab, also known as the Active Stick, and I'm joined, as always, by the wonderful Scott Matla. We are recording this pretty early on a Sunday morning, not just pretty early on a Sunday morning for both of us. I think legitimately pretty early on a Sunday morning. So please bear with us. Scott, how are you doing? And are you ready to talk about prospects?
I have never not been ready to talk about prospects on this podcast, especially in the dead part of summer here for hockey news, and that, like we've said before, Ken Hughes has nothing really left to do. The only thing going right now is World Junior Summer Showcase is over. We're waiting on rookie camp in September. There's not much happening, so I am always ready to talk prospects on this show.
We are plugging along, and speaking of hockey news, we turn our attention to the hockey news. So we're using this article as kind of a springboard for this discussion today. So make sure you go to the hockey news and check out Tony Ferrari's article. It is literally, he did prospect pool reviews of all of the NHL teams, and he did the Montreal Canadiens very recently. And it actually isn't negative in any way, really. There are some shortcomings that the Canadiens need to work on. So in our intro, when I said instruction manual, we basically are going to take the weaknesses highlighted by Tony and talk about what the Canadiens need to do in the next couple of drafts. So I don't want to rehash the entire article because you really do need to go look at it. It is quite detailed. And one of the things that really jumps out at me, and the reason that I want everybody to go read it, is that sometimes we get bogged down in the day-to-day and everything that we're talking about, and we kind of forget that overall, the Montreal Canadiens have a pretty good, pretty deep prospect pool. And the next couple of years, if everything works out in terms of development, should give us a lot of hope for the coming, I would say the coming 6 or 7 years.
Yeah, and I'm just looking at the end of the article here, the prospect depth chart notables. It is not like one person and then a bunch of guesses in many of these spots here, which is good. There is depth behind it, and some is, you have a guy like Uri Slafkovsky, and behind that is Sean Farrell and Emil Heineman, and then in some spots you have, Jacob Fowler and Caden Primo, and then a bunch of guesses on goaltending. The Canadian strength is that they have a lot of pieces in there, and sometimes someone emerges from that, and sometimes you lose some of the driftwood with that, because sometimes players just don't make that next step. And the Canadiens, like we've talked about before, are no longer bound by, well, we need to have at least one of these people work out, because we only have 3 or 4 top pieces. They have a lot of pokers in the fire at this point, that they are not bound to just hoping Joshua Waugh makes it or hoping Owen Beck makes it. If they don't, for whatever reason, and I don't think that they won't make it, is that they are not on an island now and kind of left without answers, and that there is a next man up mentality inside that prospect pool that fills a lot of the potential issues that if players don't develop properly, which we've talked about a lot with Adam Nicholas and Marie-Philippe Poulin and everybody else who works at the camps. They're investing a lot into making sure all of these players are given the best opportunity to succeed and to hit that next level now.
I agree. And I think one thing that you kind of have to talk about, or not talk about, keep in mind is that not everyone's going to work out. Some people are just not going to live up to their potential, and some people are going to get traded away for other reasons. But the idea is that you have enough quality in your depth. You don't just have numbers. You don't just have like a number of players at every spot. You have quality at every spot. So if one guy doesn't work out, there's three other people that could potentially be part of your future. So I think that to me is that, like, I think the skill in that is in the later rounds, like trying to come up with gems, trying to come up with people with a high upside that, you know, you can kind of work on whatever weaknesses they have. Maybe it's a player whose scouting reports aren't that great for now, but you see something in them that you can develop into something greater. And honestly, that's also one of the reasons why I'm always like, you have to take the best player available. I don't think I invented that. You know what I mean? Like it's generally good conventional wisdom to take the best player available at every spot if you know that your team is not going to contend for a couple of years, or if your team is contending and you know that this person isn't going to get a crack at the lineup for a couple of years. So I wanted to highlight in particular one area of strength that Tony Ferrari pointed out, which is something that I think generally in the last few years we've seen as a weakness. We've seen as a weakness with the on ice product, not the depth chart, is defense. Tony Ferrari said that uh, there's a lot of hope on defense. Obviously, he highlighted Lane Hudson, and I think, you know, we're going to talk a little bit more about Lane Hudson in the and sorry, in the third segment of this episode. But I think, like, looking at the Canadiens' defense prospects, I definitely feel that there's a lot more hope than there used to be even 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah, I look at the depth chart here, and he highlighted Lane Hudson, David Reinbacher, Logan Mailloux, and Adam Engstrom in particular. And this is just prospects. This does not include the Caden Gooley, the Justin Barron, the Arbor Jackeye, Jordan Harris, the guys who are in the NHL right now. And you realize that we talked about how they don't have to rely on just one of these players making it. In years past, like when they drafted Mikhail Sergachev, we don't have another defensive prospect. This person has to make it. It has to work out. And I look at now in that Lane Hudson is one, there are flaws to his game. Defensively, he has work to do. We know that. But what he brings on the other side of that is so rare. The Canadiens haven't had anything like that. And then you add in Jaden Struble, you add in William Trudeau, guys who look like they could be a regular third pairing defenseman at the NHL level, maybe step up a little bit more if they continue to grow that game there. You look at someone like Logan Mailloux, who has an undeniable skill set in terms of his raw shooting power and his mechanics with that to score 25 goals as a defenseman in the OHL. There's so much to like in here. And we've talked a lot about how it's going to get complicated on defense. There will be good prospects playing outside the NHL because the Canadiens' defensive group is so strong right now. There's nothing you can really do about that. And it's a good problem to have because, hey, maybe one of these guys had only one good year in them, then they kind of fell off a little bit. We know Lane Hudson's probably coming at the end of next NCAA season. We know David Reinbacher will likely be coming next NHL season. Adam Engstrom, same thing. And then there's the lesser-known guys, a guy like Dmitry Kostenko, who's playing in the KHL. He's playing professional hockey. There's Bogdan Kuniashkov, who they drafted in the draft this past year on defense. It's hard to not see their defensive pool here. And yeah, Lane Hudson is far and away like the top name there with Reinbacher behind him, but there's so much quality depth in there to really make a lot out of this.
I think that's the thing, is that you can't make an elite lineup out of players who do not have that talent or that potential. And that's the biggest thing to keep in mind, is like when you are drafting, you're drafting particularly for skill. And you're worrying about the other stuff later, right? Because like people are like, oh, small players, large players, this, that, and the other. Your players need to be able to skate and they need to have talent. Like that's the basic formula there. You're not going to make a great player out of somebody who simply does not have that talent in them. So I think the Canadiens in the last couple of years have given us a lot of reasons to hope. But in the meantime, there are still some areas of improvement. And again, we're using Tony Ferrari's article as a springboard because we want you to go actually read the article yourself and get the hope yourself. But we're going to talk about some areas for improvement for the next couple of drafts for the Montreal Canadiens. I mean, what would we have them do? And that's coming up in just one moment. But first, I want to tell you about our partner, AG1. It's the daily foundational nutritional supplement that supports whole body health. We drink it every day, and we were tired of taking so many supplements, and we wanted a single solution that supported our entire body and covered all our nutritional bases every single day. We wanted better gut health, we wanted a boost in our energy, support for our immune systems, and there's so many vitamins and pills and supplements out there. How are we supposed to know which one to take and when? So we take AG1 once a day, and it makes us feel unstoppable, energetic, and we know that we are supporting our energy and our immune system. And if a comprehensive solution is what you need from your supplement routine, then you try AG1 yourself and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase. Go to drinkag1.com/NHL network. That's drinkag1.com/NHL network. Check it out. And it's time to talk about areas for improvement. Scott, I think one of the things is that I looked at Tony Ferrari's, what he said for weaknesses in his article. Again, you can check it out on the Hockey News. Definitely. And we will obviously, I've retweeted it on our Twitter account. We will obviously put a link to it in the show notes for today so you can find it. And like the weaknesses are obviously something that has been highlighted a lot in Montreal, not just in the last couple of years, but over a long period of time, is that there's truly no game-breaking superstar. There's nobody in the prospect pool that is wow, amazing, perennial all-star kind of player, like a Cale Makar, for example. There's nobody like that. So Lane Hudson does come close, and Tony Ferrari does give the Habs credit for that. And if Juraj Slafkovsky hits his potential, that's another thing. But how do the Canadiens do this, knowing that they probably won't draft as low as they did in the last couple of years?
I think the biggest thing is, and this is going to bring back the whole Mishkov-Benson debate from the past draft here, is you sometimes have to take that leap of faith on a talented player who maybe has, I don't want to say red flags, just some things that, maybe you weren't looking for, but it is an opportunity here. The Canadiens have had no issue taking risks at trading for players that maybe didn't fit into the plans of their current teams, which, okay, Kirby Dach and Alex Newhook is a good ad. And they've gone and taken risks on a Philip Machar, on a Lane Hudson, on some of these other players here you have to take that risk at some point. And even if they're drafting, let's say 11th or 12th next year, you will have players who will drop in these draft classes. Unfortunately, next year is apparently a very large defensive draft year. But if Reinbacher fit what they wanted to stabilize this team, to play out from the back, basically, it made sense. I would have preferred the high-end skill there. The biggest thing is you're not going to just magically be able to trade for it. Teams aren't usually willing to give up in part with their own skilled prospects. But a lot of it is if you're not going to draft, people who have that gene, basically, that, hey, I'm going to be a superstar. And even Lane Hudson didn't. He had the potential, and he's grown into that. You have to nurture and allow these players to grow in a way that lets them make up some of that ground in there. Like Joshua Waugh being a pro this season. He's a guy who led the QMJHL in scoring. He can score goals. Can you get him to that next level to be an NHL scoring there? He doesn't have to be a superstar. There are very few players in the Canadiens organization, like the weakness to say, that track to be a superstar. But we can get more in that range, and we, like the development staff, the Canadiens, can do that with like a Juraj Slafkovsky. You can turn him. He has all the physical traits to be that. You have to be able to grow and mold them and keep them in that right track going forward. And yeah, he only played 39 games last year, less than half a season. it's too soon to say what he's going to look like. What is Philip Machar going to look like in their pro season? What is Riley Kidney going to do? What are some of the, like Sean Farrell, guys who have the intelligence already up there? Can they translate that at the professional level there? And it is a weak spot. The biggest thing is you're not going to be able to trade for it. Develop as hard as you can with what you've got. Yeah, you don't have a McCarr, you don't have a McKinnon, you don't have an Austin Matthews or whatever, but that's okay if you can fill the gap with so many other good players that your true stars, your Suzuki, your Caulfield, your Hudson in the future are able to do their thing, and you can support them with that. So they're not on an island like McDavid was with the Oilers for pretty much all of his life outside of playing with Draisaitl, I guess.
Yeah, and that's the important thing, and you can kind of look at it the other way. Like Scott, that's a really good point. Is that you can turn it around and be like, yeah, the Canadiens don't have that game-breaking superstar just yet, but it's not like they have a game-breaking superstar and then nothing. They have a lot of really good depth. So if they ever do get that player, and I really hope they do in the next couple of drafts, they find somebody that can be that guy, then I really, really think that, the talent that they would be able to surround that player with is going to speak for itself. It's like to me, it's a very positive outlook that I have on the future, despite the fact that the Canadiens don't have that. Well, we're not sure yet. There's a couple of potentials, right? But right now, it doesn't seem like they have that true breaking superstar at the moment. So, what's the other thing? I think for me, like the other thing that I would do in the next couple of drafts is have a little bit more of a variety. I think not in terms of players, but in terms of, I think, trying to, like, in terms of the level of risk you take at each spot. I would like to see a little bit more variety. I would like to see less safe plays. I would like to see a lot more high risk. I think that to me, because they've got a deep enough pool right now that the next draft in particular, they can afford to take some risks. Like you can't run your entire draft that way the entire like throughout your tenure as a front office, but you can afford to take some risks.
And that's the thing is it's like if you're picking someone with a guaranteed like floor, that is fine. Getting and knowing you're drafting an NHL player is always a huge benefit for you. But at some point, you have to take that leap of faith here. And I think that is it's why the 2023 draft is so frustrating to everybody, because we saw them do it in the 2022 draft. Is that risk, safer pick, risk, safer pick. They're doing these things that it makes sense. And in this draft here, and we're hoping that they are not picking in the top 5, and we're hoping that they have improved a little bit. They're in that 11, 12, 13 range and moving towards the playoffs there, because every year good players inevitably fall. Player like Zach Benson in this draft, Michkov, etc. When good players fall, being there and wanting to take the risk on things, you can do that. It's like you said, is that you can draft for floor all you want, and that's all well and good and cool because you got a guaranteed NHL player out of it. But if you had the opportunity to draft a guy who has that superstar potential and your prospect was lacking that and you pass on it, then I start running into some concerns with that, is that they have to take that leap of faith and trust in the scouts that advocate for these players here overall.
I agree, and I think one of the things that I find right now, and Hattie and Sebastian talked about it on our episodes that we did a couple weeks ago, is that there doesn't seem to be outward communication regarding their draft strategy and their scouting. And again, it's not like they owe us anything. It's just that it would vastly improve, I think, the fans' outlook on their drafting and their prospect pool if the Canadiens were a little bit more forthcoming with why and how they do things. You don't have to spill your entire secrets to the media. That's not what we're asking for. But I think having like a little bit more of a handle on what their overall identity and philosophy would be a little bit would go a long way. Not a little bit, would go a long way for fans to kind of understand like what the next steps are going to be. And in the meantime, what our next steps are going to be is we are going to talk about a couple players who we should be excited about. You already know it, but we're going to rehash it anyway, because you know what? It's the summer and we want to be positive and we want to be happy, and that's coming up in just one moment. All right, Scott, I think for me, the name that I'm the most excited about is Lane Hudson.
I mean, how can you not be? And everyone, and I want to say it was Mark Dumont always does this, that, well, he's too small to make it at the NCAA level. He won't succeed there. Well, he won't keep it up at the NCAA level. Well, he can't do it at World Juniors. Oh, he can't do that. Every single time someone tells Lane Hudson he can't do something, he does something. And Canadiens fans have a great experience with this, going through it with Cole Caulfield before, is that, well, he won't be able to do it in college like he could in the U.S. program. Well, he won't be able to score immediately in the AHL. He won't be a consistent scorer in the NHL. Well, shut up. You stop doubting. Stop doubting the small,
Short
talented play.
Kings.
Yes, stop doubting the short kings in this organization, and that there are wrinkles to Lane Hudson's game that do need smoothing out. His defensive work and coverage is a work in progress, which, okay, is fine because he's developed such a high-end offensive game that you as a coach have to look at this and go, I will make this work one way or the other here. I'm not going to ask Lane Hudson to sacrifice his best asset to do something else right now. Or at least a good coach shouldn't do that. You shouldn't quash the creativity out of Lane Hudson. The goal that he scored against Sweden in the World Junior Summer Showcase, he's behind the net and gets away from two closing defenders to score a goal in front of the net. He's an insanely talented player. And out from players who are not inside the professional ranks right now in terms of prospects and everything else, he is far and away the top prospect in this organization. David Reinbacher is a second place finish to that. And I think all eyes are going to be on him this year with his development going forward. But it is Lane Hudson's season to shine once again. And he looks primed to do that again. I don't know if he will hit the same levels that he did at BU last year, just because certain names have left. The team is going to be a little bit different. Other teams have gotten a year to kind of look at him.
And also, he set such a high bar.
Exactly. Is that he was historically good last year. And the fact that he didn't get a Hobie Baker nomination is beyond bonkers to me.
It's a crime.
But yeah, well, hey, Matthew Nyes or something, I guess. But like, I know Logan Cooley won it, but come on.
And Logan Cooley did deserve it, but he should have at least been in the top.
I was going to say, I don't know if Hudson would have won the Hobie Baker, but at least
he should have been a finalist.
Exactly, should have. He is the cog that will churn the Canadiens forward. His pro debut is going to have Caulfield level hype behind it. And he might go and he might go play for the Rocket like Caulfield did originally, because Habs aren't exactly likely to be pushing for a playoff spot. And you know what? You bring him in and maybe he plays a few games at the NHL level. Maybe he just plays a bunch at the AHL level to finish out the season. And then you bring him up. Who knows? He is the guy. And Tony also put it in here. It's a great season. It's a great time for Juraj Slafkovsky here. He has work to do, but we know that he has the physical traits to do it. He is the player I am most interested in watching this year, because he might go to the AHL for some time. He might, play in the NHL. They're going to give him the opportunity. I want to see what adjustments he has made from last year to this year in terms of, just reading the on-ice play and having the spatial awareness around him. Juraj Slafkovsky is my probably guy in the professional ranks that I am most keeping an eye on this upcoming season.
So I wanted to ask you, other than obviously Lane Hudson and Juraj Slafkovsky, who is low-key a player that you're really, really excited about that we don't really hype up that much? I think I'm going to guess who yours is, but go ahead.
Who do you think mine is?
I was going to say Jaden Struble.
He's in there, and I think he is a lot more professional ready than I thought based on the way he played last year. For me, it's Sean Farrell. Farrell's gotten kind of lost in the shuffle a little bit because the NHL roster is full. The growth and maturation of Rafael Harvey-Pinard last year kind of took over. And Farrell only played a handful of games when most Habs fans are like, I just want the season to be over. Like, I'm tired. Right. I'm done with this. I think
so he was kind of hurt by that.
Yeah. And he'll be an AHL player this year just based on the NHL roster being full. and he'll play with Waugh and with Heineman and with Lias Anderson, etc. There's a lot of talented players for him to work with. And I think we're going to see a really strong season from Sean Farrell here, because despite being one of the best prospects the Canadiens have had in recent years, he always is like quietly going about his business. Caulfield was scoring goals and winning Hobie Bakers. Lane Hudson's making a highlight reel, etc. And then Sean Farrell just quietly 2 assist night, 2 goal night, 4 assist night, this, and just quietly racking up points at Harvard at the same time. It's really good to be excited about him. And I think he slid under the radar a little bit because so many people have focused on the defensive prospects and such in there. So I think Sean Farrell is going to be the guy that besides Slafkovsky and Hudson, that I am most excited to watch this year.
Mine is going to be Adam Engstrom, because he's not ready yet. Obviously, he's not coming over yet. But like low key, who I'm most excited to see, we're expecting things from Owen Beck. We're expecting things like, I think Philip Méchard is a fun question mark, a fun puzzle to solve. But I'm excited about Adam Engstrom the most, like somebody who we don't talk a lot about, and mostly it's because I never stop talking about Lane Hudson. I think that's partly it. So I want to hear from our listeners as well. Who are you excited about? Tell us who you're like low-key excited about and who you're like really, really hyped up about. And you can leave those comments in our YouTube. You can also email us at lockedoncanadians@gmail.com. You can tweet us, or whatever it is that we call it now, at LO_Canadians. Remember always that you can find us wherever you get your podcasts, and we are free and available. And we're also on YouTube, and don't forget to hit that bell so that you know when we post new content. I think the next episode is going to be a surprise because I'm going to be off for the next episode. At least we think so. But in the meantime, make sure that you are subscribed, and so you'll know what's happening. And thank you so much for listening. Scott, we'll talk to you next time.